Okay, we are back to finish up section 2.1. In this video, we're going to talk about how to use your graphing calculator to find the relative mins, the relative max, as well as the ranges where a function is increasing and decreasing. So I have a little example here at the bottom of your handout, and I've gone ahead and typed this into the calculator. So if you need to pause, you can do that now and get that typed in. A couple things as you're doing that to point out. First of all, this leading negative sign, you do have to use the negative sign, not the subtraction. So instead of using the minus that we would use if this was in the middle of the operation that's over there on the right hand side, you're going to use the negative sign that's in the bottom row just to the left of the inner button that has the parentheses around it. So anytime you have a leading negative sign, you're going to want to use that. And when we're graphing, that's almost always, that's one of the most common reasons why we have errors when we graph or when we're putting a calculation is that we use the minus button instead of the negative. The other two minus signs in this function, you're going to just use the regular minus sign for those. The other thing, if you're not sure how to do x cubed, you use the caret button. So to do x cubed, you first have to enter the x. So that to do that, you do alpha, which is this green button on my calculator. Yours might be a different color. And then the x is located just above the store. So you do alpha and then store. And then the caret is right above the division sign. And then you do the 3. So that gives you x to the third power. Okay, pause if you need to. Once you get that in, go ahead and hit graph. And you see we get something that looks very similar to what we did up at the top of the page. It's just kind of the opposite. So it comes down from the left, makes that curve at the bottom, and then it curves back down a little bit farther over to the right and ends up going down to the right. So the points that we're wanting to find are the point that is at the very bottom of this first turn, where it turns back up after coming down. And then we want to find the relative max, which would be the top of this curve where it curves to go back down. So one thing that you can do, and this isn't, we're going to have a better way, but if you haven't used this yet, there is a trace button. If you press that, so I don't think you can see my mouse on the screen. I'm not sure. So the fourth button over on this top row, these are all kind of your graphing buttons that says trace. When you press that, you get what you see up here on my screen where you have this flashing cursor on the curve, and you can use the left and right arrow buttons to move it to the left or the right, and you can kind of get close to those points and kind of go, okay, it looks like that lowest point is somewhere around x equals 1 or x point 1.0638. You can see it kind of skips past it, and maybe around -8. So if I had to make a guess, my guess would be as if this is a nice number, which it may not be. It may be a decimal, but if it is something that comes out even, my guess would be is it's the point 1, -8. We'll see when we actually do it. And then going up here to the top of the curve, it looks like maybe we're at 3, -4. You guys see that on the bottom where it lists what x and y are equal to where my cursor's at. And then when I just click 1 to the right, it kind of goes past that. So it looks like it's somewhere around the point 3, -4. So let's actually calculate those. So the way to calculate them is to use the calc function. We've used this before already. So you need to hit the second button, and then calc is actually right above trace. You're going to press trace. And the one that we're looking for here to find the relative, we'll do the relative min first. You're going to go down. You can either use the arrows to go down to the third row, or you can just press the number 3 and enter for minimum. Okay, so now the calculator knows that we want to calculate the minimum, but it's kind of a 3-step process now. This is an educational calculator, so rather than them just give us the answer, they have us do a little guessing game. And also, because it is possible that there'd be more than one place that the graph would have a relative minimum. For example, this could loop up and down all the way across the screen. So they want to know which one of the relative minimums do you want. In this case, there's only one, but the way the calculator is designed is that you tell it which one. And the way you do that is you make sure that the cursor, again, looking at that flashing cursor on your screen, make sure it is on the left side of the minimum that you're trying to find. and it hasn't curved to go another direction. So you can see mine is just a couple beats over to the left of where my minimum is. And you can see, to remind you that you need to be on the left side, down here at the bottom it says left bound. So we're putting a left bound on that interval. So we're saying we want to find the minimum that is in this interval that we're going to establish. So here is the left side of that interval, so hit enter. Now you notice that the words down there at the bottom change to right bound, so we're going to move the cursor with the arrows until we're sure we're on the right side, but we haven't gone to the next curve. We don't want to have another min or max in between. So we're making an interval to where there's just this one minimum in between, and you can see where the cursor is now. That is on the right side of our curve, but nothing else has happened yet. So I'm going to hit enter again. Now again, because this is a educational calculator, it's wanting you to take a guess. Well, our guess was 1/8, so you could actually type that in and see what it says, but you can just skip and just go ahead and hit enter again. And sometimes it takes a little bit to calculate, and it is an iterative process. So the calculator doesn't actually calculate them straightforward. What it does is it takes those 2 points that you just defined, that interval, and it does an iteration where it keeps getting closer and closer to the minimum to check, okay, am I going lower? Am I going lower? Am I going lower? So sometimes there's a little bit of error. So you can see that the minimum came out to be, on my calculator, 1.000008, and the y value of -8. Now your calculator might have come up with something slightly different, but the fact remains that there's a little bit of error there just because of the way the calculator does. So when you get these where it's just so slightly different than a whole number, you can assume that there's just a little error there out there in those. You know, we're way out to the 7th decimal place when we got there to the 8 on that x. So our answer is the point 1, -8. I'm going to write that on the notes. So this is our relative min, so I'm just going to abbreviate rel. And I was trying to write with my mouse. I forgot I have the stylus that's so much easier. So relative, change back to the pen, min, and it was the point, going back over here to the calculator, 1, -8. Okay, now we're going to find the relative max. I'm going to go ahead and write that here. And so you're going to do those same steps, except this time, instead of selecting 3 under calc, which was the min, so I'm doing second, trace, which is the calc button, and then go down to max and hit enter. Okay, so now we're looking for that high point that's over here on the right. So again, you start on the left side of it, but make sure you're in between it and the next loop down. So we're at a good place right now. I'll hit enter and then arrow to the right until I've gone past it. Enter. And now it wants you to guess. Hit enter one more time, and it's doing the calculation. It's doing that iterative process we talked about. And it got 2.9999989. So again, there's that little bit of error. It is a 3. And for the y value, -4. Now, yours might have, when it did that process, it might have gone a little bit above 3 instead of a little bit below 3. But whenever they're that close, when you go out 4 or 5 decimal places and it rounds to a whole number, you can assume that it's just the error of the calculator finding that point. So now the question, so we did relative mins and relative max. We did that part of the problem. Now, where is it increasing and decreasing? So each of these mins and maxes break the graph up. So we're going to have one range that goes from -infinity out to our first place where it turns direction, which is this first relative minimum at x equals 1. So our first range is from -infinity up to 1, and that is going to be decreasing. And we can see that from the graph. It's coming down till we reach that point. Then what does it do? It starts increasing. It starts going up to the right. So we have an increasing section from 1, until we get to that relative max, which is at x equals 3. So from 1 to 3, we have increasing. And then we start decreasing again. So I'm going to do union and put this last section over here. It starts at x equals 3, and it goes out to infinity. Okay, so we have answered this whole question. So you're going to, on your homework, you're going to have things similar to this where you're going to be asked to find just the relative min or relative max or both. You might also be asked to find the ranges where it is increasing or decreasing. So that is how you use your calculator to do that. Again, it is under the calc function. You're going to do second calc, and then you have to know whether you're looking for a min or a max, which would be either 3 or 4.